Namaskar. Welcome to another edition of Now Vimash podcast. So today we have with us Mr. Deekhit Bhattacharya, who is now quite a well-known author. He's also a lawyer, and we are very fortunate to have with him with us, and we are going to discuss his groundbreaking book on how the economic prosperity of India, the dream of PM Narendra Modi of Viksit Bharat 2047, and how his ideas can actually being a catalyst into that framework of Viksit Bharat, and his ideas on administration, economy, and over the political economy as well as the democracy which is there. So today we're going to from the frame of his book which he has written, and we're going to extend this argument and also have a deep look into the democracy, demography, and also a little bit of a Bengal elections to give a reference frame what he's talking about. So namaste, Dikshit ji.
Namaste. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, so here we have the book, and also let me show his book to the audience as well on the Amazon link. So let me just share the screen. Uh, and we will request Mr. Dikshit to actually share his book's perspective from his perspective, so that then we can take forward the conversation. So yeah, so we have the book. It is the no, this one. Okay, I think the wrong window is open, but okay. So why don't you just start with your intro to the book, like why you wrote this book, and how significant your ideas are in terms of Viksit Bharat and democracy in general.
So this book was catalyzed by a series of interactions we've had over the years from people in the private and the government sectors, primarily relating to why are certain states more efficient in doing certain things, and why is it that some states are able to get better deals from the central government even if the opposition is ruling them. So, for example, one of the most long-standing gripes, let's say, that Bengali political historians have had is that Bengal was, systematically deindustrialized first using the freight equalization policy, and then the center, because we vote differently than the rest of the country, so we were discriminated against. But then the question came to me: why didn't Tamil Nadu suffer the same fate as Bengal? They were also a coastal state, an industrialized state. The freight equalization policy applied to them as well. And they also have a streak of electing anti-Congress leaders, basically since the same time period Bengal has had. So this begs the question: um, why is it that some states manage to do something better in terms of their economic performance and in terms of their negotiation with the center? And why is it that some states did not manage to do that? And to cut the long story short, it's actually not a question of nitty gritty such as who won a particular seat in Uluberia, what is happening in Asansol, why is it that a certain caste leader continues to win in Madurai. That microscopic analysis sometimes misses the wood for the trees. The answer really lies in political economy broadly, and the answer lies in the maps we use with respect to how we've demarcated our states, what purpose does it serve, and what is the proportion that we are sending to the Lok Sabha, and how is the state internally demarcating its constituencies. So, to just put a very small number, just encapsulate the spirit of the book, so to speak. The idea is that each state, same heft, each vote, same value. These are two principles on which we can have an efficient as well as a resilient economic system in India. If, let's say, for example, just to put it very simply, you've got a state with 80 seats, Uttar Pradesh, and you've got a state with exactly one seat, Sikkim. If tomorrow you're the prime minister, where would your attention go to first? If the two chief ministers are waiting for you to speak to you, where would your attention go? Obviously, where there are more seats. Similarly, within the state, if I take a look at how the state is demarcated, most states, including Bengal, by the way, most states have three very clearly identified regions that have voting patterns that repeat over time. Now, the recipe really to win any state is to demarcate your constituencies in such a way that two of these regions vote for you and one is confused enough. What that leads to is what is known as clientelism. Clientelism basically means is you capture the state's resources and then you pass on the benefits to certain economic, political, or identity based groupings, which we call vote banks. This is not an efficient system at all. And this is a direct outcome of how we've demarcated boundaries within the state and within the country. So the book addresses this problem.
Okay, understood. So now we are going to now discuss little bit more on political economy and politics. So when you talk about, and these are two different things, although they are very interrelated. Correct? The politics of state formation, in specifically in India, correct? It was based on identity politics, identity like language as the primary factor. When you had Gujarat was carved out of Maharashtra, so that was a language. Then so all the almost all the states except in northeastern states, you had this issue where it is primarily language based. So now when we are talking about you are having 75 states based on, so what criteria should these states be formed?
Right. Uh, so, firstly, just a very brief recap.
Hmm.
Broadly speaking, our states are based on a linguistic idea of states. But at the same time, what was ignored was the fact that within a language, there are often clearly identified groups. I will take the example of the quintessential linguistic state, Tamil Nadu. So in Tamil Nadu, if I go back to
Hmm.
the Chola era, uh, the Chola kings did something very interesting. They used to wear three crowns. Why did they wear three crowns? Because there are three separately identifiable regions within what we today know as Tamil Nadu, within the Tamil speaking areas of the country, that maintain their separate ways of life, eating, and yes, speaking. Now, you're saying this is, thousands of years back. What relevance does it have? Valid point. But if I take a map of these three regions as the Cholas understood it and overlay it with an electoral map of Tamil Nadu and how they vote, these three regions still exist and vote very differently. So, and so much so that these three regions continue to speak very differently, despite the fact that the script got forcefully standardized. The language has been forcefully standardized due to the Dravidian movement and their capture of state power. Despite all of that, the fact that even this basic feature that language should be something that can decide how people think, act, and electorally or politically feel, somewhere that did not really match the criteria. And it is not that we were short sighted. You see, if I actually take a look at the States Reorganization Commission report of 56, on the basis of which the first linguistic states were carved out, the report said that you should carve out Vidarbha separately from Maharashtra. The report also gave a lot of recommendations which were never followed by the government. And so much so that the report, there is a dissent note by K.M. Panikkar which is appended to the report. And in that dissent note, Panikkarji indicates that the Congress party at that time, exerted some undue influence to convince the commission not to recommend a breakup of the then united provinces, today's Uttar Pradesh, for electoral compulsions. So it is not that back at that time people weren't thinking that something is wrong. So much so that I would actually call this book, it's actually a spiritual successor of a 1955-56 text that B.R. Ambedkar wrote. B.R. Ambedkar wrote a scathing criticism of the 1956 States Reorganization Commission report. He said three, four things, and I will leave the audience to be the judge of whether he was right or wrong. He said that I don't have a problem with one language, one state. I have a problem with one state, one language. As in, sorry, once I said it the other way around. I don't have a problem with one state speaking the same language. I have a problem if you take all of the people who speak the language broadly understood and put them in a single state. Why? He gave a very interesting example that people from another typical linguistic state will be able to relate. He said that if you merge North Karnataka and South Karnataka, overall you will beggar the state. And overall, the conflicts between North and South Karnataka, which he was using as a proxy for caste, Vokalega and Lingayat, that conflict will define how the state moves forward and it is suboptimal. He also said one more thing. He said that you will cause a north-south divide. 1956, this man is talking. North-south divide you will cause. So why will you cause that? He said that you are making big states in the north, you're unionizing the north, and you're making small states in the south, you're balkanizing the south. He said that the state should be roughly equally sized, which is one of the critical recommendations of this book. He said that the state should be roughly equally sized because then the negotiating power vis-a-vis the center is equalized. He gave one more, he foresaw so much. He gave one more outcome of this report. He said that you will actually end up causing a lot of economic inequality within the state. So, what we today call, in the language of institutional economics, an extractive political economy, he foresaw that. He said that in states where, let's say, one urban center dominates, for example, if I take West Bengal, the largest city is Kolkata. The next largest city, which is Murshidabad, is abysmally small compared to Kolkata, right? So, in modern economics, if I take a look at Ruchir Sharma's thesis of ex Morgan Stanley, Ruchir Sharma actually said that whenever there is a country, and this applies to states as well, whenever there is a country where the second largest city is smaller than one third the largest city, there is always a struggle between the rural and the urban with respect to the division of resources, because the urban demands extraction and the rural resists extraction. So, most of our states, if we take a look, are either so big and unwieldy that political power and economics is dispersed and confused, or like West Bengal, they basically have one big urban center and then a very large part of the state from where that urban center is extracting resources. And this is also true for Karnataka today. This is true for a number of different states today. So, if I take the data, Ambedkar stands absolutely vindicated. And if I take modern economics, if I take modern political economy and the hindsight of 70 years of our political functioning, you basically get this book. I can't hear you, boss. You muted.
I was educated. Yeah. So very interesting points that you have raised. So primarily what you are saying is that although the states were carved out as linguistics, but there were other political, sociological, and other compulsions which made the states in the north and east bigger and smaller in the south, which was actually
Yeah,
not a very good thing in long run.
absolutely.
So now we'll discuss little bit more, like politically, it might not be a very like a ideal solution right now. Maybe ideally your book is on the ideal premise that okay, if everything goes well and in the ideal solution we could have 75 states, okay, where the political and the economic powers are shared among the different regions and different people who are there. But let's say politically may not be feasible right now, but maybe later. So if I ask you, can is there a existing infrastructure, existing policy infrastructure, or a political will to actually not create states but create a kind of administrative economic units, okay, which maybe a diluted version of your solution to better economic prospects? Because I had named the program Viksit Bharat 2047,
Absolutely.
and as you can also mention, correct, North Karnataka, South Karnataka, correct. So there are regions within the states and also in India which are economically poor, and we have regions which are very rich. Mumbai and rest of Maharashtra, Bengaluru and rest of Karnataka. Correct. So you have a lot of disparities here,
Correct.
and they are economic disparities in general. Correct? They are not political nature, but their economics is involved there. So if you want to suggest, okay, we can't have states right now, but can we have a different mechanism where the existing policy administrative frameworks can be utilized or extended to actually implement part of your solution in current political scenario?
Right. I believe there are two kinds of experiments that we have seen in our political past. First is the creation of big urban governance bodies like we have in Asansol. And the second is
Hmm,
basically creating states within states like Bodoland. Now,
hmm,
are they in theory workable? I think so. But the challenge which I see, which might be solvable, and even I don't
hmm,
actually
hmm,
have an answer to this, frankly, is that the political economy constraints which
hmm,
exist between regions of one state also exist between bodies who are subordinated to such states. So if I take an example, the when you've got the political economy centered around A, geographically within one city, and B, sectors that are important to that city, two kinds of phenomena take place. Firstly, the diversion of state resources as well as capital incentives towards sectors that may be relevant to other parts of the state are de-emphasized. So, for example, let's say if I take a look at any of my border states, which are sufficiently geographically dispersed. Let me take Uttarakhand for example. Uttarakhand shares the oldest land passes between Nepal and India. Uttarakhand also is culturally the closest to Nepal and India. Why is it that international trade into and out of Uttarakhand never took off, and the more well-known passes that are in operation from an international trade perspective are all located in Bihar and Sikkim and some in UP, um, abutting the Gorkha region,
hmm, hmm,
abutting Gorakhpur and all. So why did that
hmm,
take place? And if I take a look at, okay, where is the political center of gravity in Uttarakhand? It's basically Kumaon and Garhwal having a go at each other. And
yeah.
7 times out of 10, it's Garhwal that wins. So what
Hmm,
happens is you've got people who are far more invested both culturally as well as financially in the local logistics, small mining, minor minerals mining, for furniture trade, that is far more integrated with UP and the rest of India than, let's say, the regions that have something to do with international trade in Nepal, and would probably like investment flowing that way for them to develop a certain way. So, is it insuperable that it cannot be done? I don't think so. It definitely can be done. At the same time, dealing with these political constraints takes us back to square one, which is how exactly are we representing people within the state? Now, in this, the whole kerfuffle which we are noticing about the delimitation bill, which got rejected by the parliament, and now that the BJP has 2/3 and more or less 2/3 in both houses, might make a comeback. The kerfuffle was, okay, in the Lok Sabha, who gets how many seats as a state? So how many seats does Bengal get, Gujarat get, Karnataka get, UP get? That's the question. If I take a look at within the states, you will see one very peculiar thing happening. The peculiar thing is there is a suppression of certain kinds of representation within the states. For example, if again, I really like Karnataka. Why? Because it is probably one of the most diverse states in India, has a lot of mineral resources as well as highly developed industries. So it's like a great, uh, you know, um, if I take a look at it as a political economy petri dish, it's basically a package. So if I think of it in those terms, around 32 to 33% of Karnataka lives in what we call urban areas. The representation of urban people in Karnataka assemblies is exactly half, 16.7%. Certain kinds of interests, political economy interests. What kind of political economy interests? The mafia that mines or minor minerals, the people who take state subsidies to grow crops where they shouldn't be growing. Right. Similarly, Maharashtra has a similar example. Maharashtra has, big industrial clusters like Mumbai. It's got big good second cities like Pune. At the same time, the underrepresentation of urban people is shocking, both at a national as well as an internal level. For example, at the national level, India's largest Lok Sabha constituency is Thane by population, which means that the value of an individual voter in Thane is the least in the country. It's the least in the country. And like, how least is it compared to Dibang South, I believe, Dibang West, I believe, in Arunachal, which has the least population. The difference is something like 1,382 times. Can you see the variance? It means that someone who lives there, just because he lives there, effectively has a vote that's 1,300, almost 1,400 times as powerful as someone who happens to live in Thane. And this is not an outlier. So you can say that one or two constituencies might be here or there. As a matter of fact, at the Lok Sabha, if I take the largest five and I take the smallest five, the differential is 15.4 times. So this is by design. It's happening inside the state. And by the way, states are free to delimit. Assam delimited just last to last year. J&K delimited last to last year. So somewhere, some political economy interests, which are geographically identifiable, are making sure that you will never have the votes to push through the kind of proposals both you and me want. Whether it's a via media solution as you are representing, let's have a powerful local urban body. What happens when they don't have voting power in the house? When their voting power has been artificially deflated. So ultimately, we all go back to the same question. There is actually no way of reforming this system as such until and unless we accept that the geographies which are voting should be units on their own rather than we artificially club multiple geographies which are in conflict with each other, and where you will see power grabs between alliances and suppression of the other people who lose out effectively in the power battle. So even in your solution, I think it's workable, but it is only workable if the political elite in the state at large take a responsible position, let delimitation within the state happen responsibly first, and then accord this kind of devolution, which will, by the way, impact state finances. And impacting state finances means less money to give to Ladli and less money to give on biryani and beer during elections. No one likes that. So whatever solutions we may propose, which are similar in spirit also and substantially informed also, they're up against the same political economy constraints that we're hitting. So we've got to address the situation at the root and delimit properly, reorganize properly. So just to end the answer, it is not that this problem is unique to India in any which way, but one of our economic competitors, which is Vietnam, has figured this out. So Vietnam is actually implementing a plan where it is reorganizing all of its provinces to optimize economic. So our competitors are figuring this out.
Yeah. Okay. So a very interesting example you have given of Vietnam. Okay. I think I would request you to actually maybe sometimes maybe you can deliver 3 or 4 lectures giving concrete examples like Vietnam to actually maybe so people will understand. Okay, this is something which is because in India the politics is so much entrenched. Okay, and
Correct.
people are so much invested in politics that
Correct.
people can't see beyond the obvious. When you say said 75 state, you will say it's not possible. Leave it, and they'll not even talk about it anything else. But you gave example of Vietnam. So maybe we can maybe you can deliver 2 or 3 lectures to actually give a concrete examples within India and outside India, like Vietnam. So, okay, this is something which is already done by a country itself. So that gives a much
Yeah.
more positive impact on the audience, whoever is listening to this. Okay, this is something feasible, not a pipe dream of some idealistic person. Yeah. Okay. So now we go now a little bit into the impact of like example would be correct, North Bengal Development Authority. Now we'll
Yeah.
go back to the West Bengal, where West Bengal is very unique case, okay, in so many ways. So you, in the south of West Bengal, you have Durgapur Asansol Development Authority. On North Bengal, you have a North Bengal Authority. So now
Yeah.
we know, in terms of demographics, culture, the North Bengal is very distinct in its
Correct.
outlook, the language and
Right.
the other people who live there, Rajbongshis, Nepalis, and within North Bengal you have the Darjeeling and Siliguri. Again, it's a different kind of culture you have, and also in the South Bengal you have industrial clusters and then the farmlands. So you are already seeing a kind of political realignment happening on the voting patterns. The voting
Yeah.
pattern of North Bengal and the voting pattern of South Bengal is very different, and that we can see in the data itself. Correct? Like North Bengal is voting for BJP long before BJP came into power. So
Correct.
that it shows. Correct. So we had, I think, 1990s. You had BJP people voting for BJP.
Correct.
Yeah. So like you are seeing that whatever you're proposing, in some way, because of a lot of economic and political compulsions, states are implementing some part of it as having like administrative economic units, like North Bengal
Well,
Authority and
yes.
South Bengal Authority. They're doing it correct. They're doing it because of political compulsions as well, but they also have an economic impact as a third and second grade aspects to it. So importance of East India as an economic driver for West Bengal, and the dream of 2047 Viksit Bharat, and how your ideas can be plugged in, okay, not maybe fully but partially, to actually achieve this dream of 2047. Like your ideas of economic units and better demography by having smaller states. And I will
Yeah.
add one more thing. Take the example of Jharkhand. Jharkhand can be the richest state in India. I think I would say Jharkhand is the uh, Qatar of India. Jharkhand has so
Mhm.
much mineral resources. It would literally be the richest state in India. But because it's a small state or whatever has happened there, it is the most unstable politically because small states. So your argument of having smaller states has a bit of a like a negative impact. Like, can you explain Jharkhand in terms of, would other states have the same fate as Jharkhand if they are carved into smaller states?
Right. So actually, if we take a look at the data, right, with respect to the newer states that have been carved out, not on linguistic basis. So that would be Uttarakhand, that would be Jharkhand, that would be Chhattisgarh. So these are states which were carved out based on identity issues. These were states which were carved out based on mineral wealth. Actually, the data is very clear. If I compare Jharkhand to its state of, like the state from which it was carved out, we see a structural break in GSDP growth. Same goes for Chhattisgarh. Same also goes for Uttarakhand. So all three of these states are actually, when they were carved out, there was a structural break in GSDP growth, and all three of them, relative to what they would have performed in the state, are doing far better outside of it. So the economic data, except for one or two flukes here, is by and large very clear, and there is a causative reasoning for it. The causative reasoning for it is basically this: if you render a state a bit more homogeneous, the possibility of identitarian conflicts having an economic manifestation, right, is reduced. And what then happens is there is a common interest amongst all the people, for example, in Jharkhand, to make sure that the steel industry is properly capitalized. The steel industry has proper logistics. The steel industry has access to mineral wealth. For example, this alignment of economic incentives is impossible. Let's say if Jharkhand was still a part of Bihar, because Bihar को पैसा agriculture को भी देना है, Bihar को पैसा manufacturing को भी देना है. Bihar also has to give a lot of free, what we would call freebies and they would call welfare schemes. Bihar also wants to trade with Nepal. Bihar also has some border disputes with some other fellows. Bihar has 1,000 different things to do. Jharkhand probably has only 50 odd things to do. And this alignment of economic incentives mean that even when different categories of identitarian groups, basically different castes or different tribes or different people, fight, the subject matter of their conflict is limited. And their agreement that, let's say, we want the steel industry and the mining industry to prosper is aligned. So no one touches that. And this causative reasoning, this reduction in embedded conflicts, is primarily why what happens in smaller states is economic policy making is far more responsive and far more efficient in terms of the rate of capital employed. So these smaller states economically are actually quite good, except for certain hill states which inherently have some problems in being profitable. And they are an exception. All of us accept that they are an exception. So much so that if I take a look at North Bengal and wonder, hey, why have they been voting differently? It's also because the proportion of money they get from the center to balance their books, they are actually far more attuned to national politics compared to Bengali politics, not because they inherently have some reason to do so. It's primarily because the money flow from the center makes them balance their books. Similarly, what people have also forgotten is last 3 elections consecutively, Rod Bangla has been voting for BJP, more or less. Why has Rod Bangla been voting for the BJP, more or less? Because their alignment on issues of industry, mineral wealth, are completely separated from concerns of, let's say, coastal and central South Bengal, which is agriculture, light industry, and trade. So somewhere you can actually identify clearly. You've got people in North Bengal. Firstly, you've got districts that were historically a part of Sikkim. The British took them. They had nowhere else to put it. They gave it to Bengal. That would be Darjeeling. That would be Kalimpong. Historically, within what I would consider, what historians would consider the ambit of Bengal, undivided Bengal, they have never featured. They're a fluke of history. When the British fought with the Bhutanese and the Sikkimese, they had nowhere else to put it. They had only one province that was bordering it, so they gave it to Bengal. So because of this reason, they're stuck in Bengal. If I separate those regions as an exception, take a look at the rest of North Bengal, take a look at Rod Bangla, which I call Mallabhum in my book, and take a look at Gowda, which is the heart of the state, so to speak. They have been voting differently in an identifiable fashion since as many elections as we've had. And what happens is two of them end up aligning on some issues and then they beat up the third. This is not an efficient model of governance, which is why your proposal, let's say, of having separate units, it makes sense, especially if devolution of political power within the state and economic power within the state can be hard coded the way, let's say, Gorkhaland Territorial Administration was tried or Bodoland Territorial Administration was tried, but these were done primarily on the basis of identity only. If the devolution was done more attuned to economic realities as well, which is except for octroi and except for transport taxes, if the ability to raise and manage their own taxes was handled a bit differently, perhaps both of these economies would be doing far better. But then the question becomes, can you really push the state government to agree to such a deal where it is effectively not getting anything? It's only losing revenue and potentially losing votes, because now what will happen is, once you devolve political and economic power, political consciousness also arises. And when political consciousness arises, their demand that we are not part of this state, we should not be a part of this state, we will not vote with parties which align themselves as sons of the soil of that state, that will only get exacerbated. Ever since you've carved the Gorkhaland Territorial Administration, except for this time, I mean, Trinamool has really struggled in GTA. Why? You've ended up creating political consciousness. So this is the problem is basically the states have no incentives to not be inefficient because the they're basically using inefficiencies that are embedded within our maps as political arbitrage to play one group of people against the other, one geography against the other, one caste against the other. That is the playbook for all politicians out there. And the only way to break that is the embedded conflict within the map means you change the map.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was like, I heard a few lectures that you gave, you talks you have gave, and I was also talking to specific individuals regarding your book and other things, and it struck me that you might have heard of it, Dholera. You have a
Yeah,
corridor, an economic corridor being built right
correct,
now, just
correct.
adjacent to Ahmedabad. Okay, or I call it Karnavati, okay, rather than Ahmedabad.
Yes, yes,
Karnavati is the ancient term.
historically.
So near Karnavati, you are having Mumbai to Ahmedabad bullet train going being built. You have the uh, Dholera smart city being built, where you have a lot of financial and other services are coming up. So, do you think the central government, specifically Mr. PM Modi's vision of Viksit Bharat, correct? He is creating this big, gigantic economic clusters. Okay, the primary idea is to have a like a gigantic economic cluster from Mumbai to Dholera,
Correct.
connected via bullet train, and you will have big industries like semiconductors, power plants, and you have other industries are coming up. You have the port, you have port there, you have airport there, so you will have logistics, correct? So you will
Correct.
create these gigantic economic clusters the way we see in Japan
Yes.
and also in China. Also, China has these like 2 3 cities are clubbed together and they become a gigantic economic machine which churns
Correct.
out in the industrial goods. So India is
Correct.
moving in that direction because politically, it is very difficult in a diverse nation like Bharat to actually. Because correct, you have a almost 80 years of political consciousness of us being Gujarati or us being Bengali. Okay, although you and me are Bengali, but the people in Darjeeling, they have nothing to do with Bengal. They have their own culture, language, everything else. Correct. But still we would drag them. No, no, you're also Bengali. Come and live with us. Because
Mm.
there is a correct, there is a kind of like sub nationalism. We
Correct.
call Bengali, Marathi, or whatever we call, and that will again politically be used by parties. So this is being bypassed by having these long-term economic gigantic economic corridors, and they are because they will be so impactful in terms of economy and also politics, that although they will be different states, you will have Gujarat and Maharashtra, but inherently they will be working as single economic units in terms of special economic zones and taxes. They will be there. So like, do you see that that is something which is not very akin, but maybe a few of the points which are being already addressed in a long term way, politically and administratively?
I actually agree with you that it's essentially an evolutionary stage where
Mhm.
perhaps via this method we will end up with proper states.
Yeah.
It's very
Hmm.
much a possibility. Why? Because if I take a look at, let's say, the state you spoke about, Gujarat only, you had the bilingual Bombay state, which fell apart in 1961. Now, Maharashtra and Gujarat. Now, why did it fall
Hmm.
apart? It wasn't just culture. It also had to do a lot with the fact that now Bombay and Surat port are together in one state. The kind of economic competition that caused within the state as to who gets how much money was the breaking point. A divorce has 1,000 reasons. उसने मेरे को ये बोला, he stole this, his mom doesn't like me, 1,000 reasons. But in this divorce, it got finalized because they couldn't decide ki who pulls how much money from the joint account. Sorry, as a lawyer, I tend to revert to examples that are more familiar to me. So now the thing is, when this happens, the same kind of centrifugal force can operate within a state as well, which we've seen, let's say, with some in the past. The On the surface, it's about identity, that we are not Ahomya, we are not Assamese. You delve a little deeper, it's got to do with Guwahati mere ko paisa nahi bhejta. So now, if I take a look at Gujarat also, Gujarat has a very particular, interesting political history. And that political history is, for a very, very, very long period of time, Gujarat's political power was dispersed amongst a lot of different people. You had the Baroda state, you had the states in Kutch, you had Porbandar, you had different states that were just, all over the place. But they agreed on one thing: dhanda nahi rukna chahiye. They were all dependent on maritime trade. And so what happened is, despite the fact they got used to the idea that political power can be decentralized, but there are some things that everyone agrees on and we will not disturb. This is actually very, very similar to, let's say, how the German reunification happened. The idea of a German nation per se did not exist until Otto von Bismarck's time, when Prussia formed the North German Confederacy for the first time ever. There was no idea that the German identity exists, and the political unification of Germany was preceded by an economic unification, the Zollverein. So what we are seeing in Gujarat's case is actually there are many Germany in a political economy sense, very broadly speaking, very, very loosely speaking. That you already had a lot of different beginning principalities, different people with different interests. Politically, many of them did not look eye to eye, but the economic compulsions of living in the same place, doing the same business, using the same communities, having the same banking and capital market systems, it just brought them together in a way where they're used to the idea of political decentralization, which is also why Surat Municipal Corporation is one of the most successful municipal corporations. No state government gives any money to municipal corporations. You've got your National Financial Commission, the Finance Commission. I think we're on the 16th or the 17th. That tells the central government that, look, boss, divisible pool, you have to give so much money to each state based on this criteria. There are entire states which don't even have their state financial commissions constituted since 2-3 different terms. So no money comes to the municipal corporations. You forget the states which we considered least developed. You go back to Karnataka, Bangalore Municipal Corporation is bankrupt. They've admitted in court last year that they don't have money to fix roads. No money coming from the state. Mayoral elections have not been held for the past 10 odd years or 12 years. So why does this happen? We're going back to the same concept. The state does not have an interest here. So what we could see in Gujarat is actually a very good via medium, where we are able to show that if you politically decentralize a bit, economically you allow regions to specialize in what they're good at. If tomorrow Kutch specializes just in the generation of solar electricity, it could power all of North India. If the region surrounding Surat, Vadodara concentrates just on international trade, they're already doing so great. Similarly, the industrial clusters which they're setting up in Dholera and Dahej, India's largest chemical industries, if you ask them, where do you want to put your next industry, there's only two options on the table: Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. And Gujarat edges you out 8 times out of 10. Why? They've built those ecosystems, allowed the local political equations to be done a certain way, so much so that the only IFSC which we have, just for the benefit of the audience, what is an IFSC? An IFSC is an area that the Indian government says that from a foreign regulations perspective, we don't consider it a part of India. What that means is foreign money can come and go as they please without disturbing the rest of the country. The only IFSC in India is in Ahmedabad, sorry, Gandhinagar. Why is it that it came up in Gandhinagar and it's not something that has just happened? They've been working on it since 2015. What the it means that the state government loses out on revenue, the state government loses out on a lot of things in the short term, but in the long run, the sheer amount of money that comes, it starts revolving in and around the state. There's a knockdown impact. So Gujarat has had a history of politically dispersed, political power being dispersed. But most of the states which we currently have, they've been formed with the pretext of certain kinds of people monopolizing the politics in that state. You can't solve that without hard boundaries. Yeah, I think we've I think we've lost Dada.
Yeah, sorry. I had a
Yeah,
connection. Yeah, I had a connection issue, so it just got locked down.
no,
Yeah, I heard your argument, okay, from the other device. So now we're going to end of our program. So
right.
what I'm going to ask you is, I had actually done some research, like did some searches. So in the United States, correct, in US, you have a system where you have federal taxes and you have state
Yeah,
taxes. So
yeah,
in general, the all the US states actually are self-sufficient. They have their own taxes they generate and they run their finances. Okay. There is not a lot of, in terms of economics, in terms of economic infrastructure and other administrative things. The
right.
states in US are actually kind of an independent country itself, from
Correct.
whatever I have understood. And you have
Right.
federal taxes which are there, and they take it and they will help in case there's some requirement. In India we also have a similar structure, not exactly but similar structure, where
Mm.
generally states will have their own revenue and center will help them when there's a requirement.
Mhm.
In broad cases, correct. GST is a very innovative way, because GST is kind of actually helping to get the state and the center to come on the same table and
Correct.
implement things, because the more GST
Right.
it is generated, correct, it helps the state as well as the center.
Correct.
So it creates a little bit more like harmonious relationship, like
Correct.
specifically southern India had a kind of an enmity with the center since
Correct.
1970s, and that was also because of various reasons. Not it was not always language, correct. Still we
Yeah.
see, correct, the south people are saying, at least the political leaders are saying that, okay, the revenue that we contribute are not given to us. So
Right.
in that contextual thing, like I'll go back to, like, see, from my perspective, whatever I have analyzed, understood, correct, the
Right.
policies of the BJP government for last 12 years, correct, they are not looking for a conflict. They are giving incentives, they are giving bit of space for others to actually. End of the day, their goal is, because I have named the program Viksit Bharat 2047.
Yes.
You cannot have a Viksit Bharat with conflict being happening between center and states for uh, 10, 12 years, correct. So the only option is, which has been implemented, is to, by giving incentives, like, correct, for GST, correct. GST was a very, like, a difficult thing to pass through in a politically volatile environment, where the center gave money to the states
Yep.
and asked them. So center gave them money and said, you implement GST, whatever losses you have, we will reimburse you. So it was a kind
Mm.
of a thing where they were saying, okay, come and work with us, and it is beneficial to you.
Correct.
So in that way, is that the BJP government in particular, okay, they are giving, I would not say bribes, but kind of incentives for states to come and work on a non-political solution of your ideas. That is industrial clusters, which has
Hmm.
been going to develop. Correct. In also
Yeah.
the correct the old Rust Belt you have, correct, Howrah, Domjur Belt. Correct. There also you will have a lot of industries are being coming up. Uh, there are plans to actually open. You also have Hind Motors opened up quite recently. So this idea of economic clusters, bigger in West India and smaller in East India because of other things, and they are going to actually make sure be the precursor to having these smaller states, because money is the most important factor. Okay. If
100%.
a small state is carved out and nobody loses revenue, then they will be happily part ways. Correct? It's like divorce. Correct. Everybody gets what they want, then they have no no problem. So
Correct.
this creation of smaller states, units, correct, can be facilitated when you have economic sustainable units being created, as Dholera being created. You have a corridor being built from Siliguri to Delhi. Bullet train is
Hmm.
happening. Correct.
Hmm.
This again
Hmm.
is going to create a very gigantic industrial corridor. And then
Hmm.
once they are economically viable, then politics will not come into play to creating those states. What do you think? Uh, is that a something which
I,
is
I,
happening?
I,
Very far-fetched
I,
idea.
I broadly agree. There are four big points, though, over which it's not just me. Every member of the audience, any citizen who's interested in the future of the country, should think very carefully about. So, let me take you back in history, right after the independence, to undivided Bihar. And we are not going to talk about, you know, Jharkhand here. We're going to talk about Mithila. So, the Raja of Darbhanga was one of the most prolific entrepreneurs we had in the history of this country. And the Raja of Darbhanga invested very heavily in trying to industrialize Mithila. So Mithila was an incredibly fertile region. You know, it's one of the most fertile regions in India. You can grow 3 crops in a year there. And then Raja of Darbhanga was sitting on cash, and he said that we are independent. We're in a new country. I'm going to open the first airlines. I'm going to open, industrial units. I'm going to bring chemical industries here. I'm going to build heavy industries. I'll have a steel plant. Now, what you are saying operated, what you were saying was being done there as well. You had the Raja of Darbhanga, which was trying to, bring Mithila up, economically speaking, with the rest of Bihar. Actually, Mithila was slightly ahead. He wanted it to go to the next level. The then Congress Bihar chief minister sabotaged him to such a degree that the family basically went bankrupt. Why did that happen? See, the problem is that within a state, when your politics, electoral politics, is predicated on conflict and scarcity. Why? Let me break this down even further. Until and unless I have not reduced my citizens, and we spoke about this just before we connected on this call. You have to reduce the citizen to a beneficiary, and only from a beneficiary he will become a subject. He has to be completely dependent on the state, which is why when you give 3,000 rupees a month, they come out and vote for you. Which is why if you give them a small freebie, they come out and vote for you, because mentally they become completely dependent on the state. In today's day and age, when you don't have that socialistic overhang, the form of how this has to be done has changed. So now what happens is there is an inherent tendency for whoever is sitting in power, representing whatever geographic and economic groups they have, to limit the periphery economically. The threat is that if the periphery becomes economically self-sufficient, they will not be dependent on whatever money the state capital is sending, whatever money is being supplemented by the party fund, and hence they might vote differently. They might actually vote for their own interests. This is a serious problem in most Indian states. And states like Gujarat are a very rare exception. So there is a political economy constraint on even this intermediary, even this transitional thing. We're thinking that okay, let us devolve within the state. Let us try to economically empower regions within the state. There is a political economy constraint there, a serious one, because as long as these entrenched powers are there, a they will make sure that your vote doesn't count. If you're urban, good luck to you anyways in the country. But even otherwise, how is it? So in the like Indian context, when I speak of GDP, most of us are in the service economy, right? How is it that whether it's the states assembly or whether it's the Lok Sabha, services are the least represented? If I take out the doctors and lawyers, these two people, there's hardly any industrialists, there's hardly any tradesmen. Why is it that? How did that come to pass? Because this is actually an aberration historically. If I think of England, England had the aristocracy in the parliament. When they started industrializing and colonizing, what happened? The commercial classes started entering the parliament. That caused conflict. Obviously, no aristocrat wants to let go of his power. No aristocrat wants, some upstart two-bit fellow who's just gotten some money. Who does he think he is? So, if you remember Robert Clive, the person who began the ruin of Bengal, Robert Clive committed suicide at 39 because he went back with all the wealth of Bengal. Parliament opened some kind of investigation against him because they were not happy that these commercial people are coming into the parliament. But over time, what happened is the aristocrats said that look, land as a factor of the economy is becoming increasingly less important. It's more about trade and scales and this and that. So they reinvented the House of Lords, started sitting in the House of Lords, and the House of Commons got dominated by the commercial classes. How is it that in India that has not taken place? That has not taken place because we've delimited it on purpose to overrepresent the agricultural classes. To overrepresent, I'm not scared of saying this, certain castes which are dominant on land as their primary source of income, or at least their social standing. And we all know who they are. Ironically, in the Mandal Commission report, if I take a look at the people who he was saying that there's no he called them dominant Yadavs, Jats, Gujars. He called them dominant in the report. Why? Because they're landed castes, socially dominant landed castes. How is it that they continue to dominate our politics in this transition which happened in England so many years ago, centuries ago, never happened here? You're making sure systematically, because of how you've drawn your states and your constituencies, that the kind of economics you and me want will never be sanctioned by that assembly, because that assembly is not representing truly the interests of the state at large and its population and economic agents. It's representing a very skewed conception of what the state is, overwhelmingly agricultural and skewed towards certain landed castes. So now you're hitting a constraint. I'm not saying it's not possible to do the kind of experiments you and me want to do, but until and unless, see, incrementalism has limits on its speed. Incrementalism can also have limits on what it can achieve. It doesn't mean that if you let an incrementalist system run till infinity, it will lead you to the same outcome as an instantaneous system if you let it run for 10 seconds. Generally speaking, an incrementalist system dies out long before that extreme break that you want. So even in the United States, they're sitting on a huge problem. Around 32, 33 of their states, they don't have enough money for themselves. The rest of the states have to bankroll them. That causes a lot of conflict and problems. Why do you think this whole electoral college reform thing is gaining pace in uh, the east and the west coasts? It's primarily because they're saying, I give all the money, you don't have population. In 1776, you guys decided that you want to band together. Very good, very nice. Why should I bankroll you? Why should you be represented beyond what your population and your the money that allows you is? Even in India, let's say the southern states are saying that we give more money, we give more money. Fine, one can argue that historically you were at an advantage. The Britishers favored the coast anyways over the inlands. In 1857, they destroyed the North Indian economy through and through. All of that is fine. If I remove Bangalore urban constituency from Karnataka's GSDP calculation, their per capita GSDP falls by a third. So they are also extracting a lot of money from 2, 3, 4, 5 different constituencies and clusters and redistributing it within their state. Why is it a problem when that happens at the national level? Because the problem, what the politicians want us to believe, is a problem of distribution of taxes. The real problem this country has is a distribution of investment. And investment is a function of who does the economic policy making, who does the allocation. If the allocation is being done by an assembly that is dominated by the landed agricultural people who find competition in manufacturing rather than state interest, how do you expect them to support the kind of initiatives you and me want this country to happen? Ultimately, if you're not representing economically, socially, politically the actual populace, hence each vote same value, it is impossible for you to do rational economic policy making. And when it is impossible for you to do rational economic policy making, you will not allocate capital efficiently, you will not allocate to strategic industries, you will not build industrial clusters. Even today, why is it that the central government does so much work when it comes to industrial clusters and corridors? State governments have lagged severely they have lagged in investments. Why?
Except states like Maharashtra and Gujarat, or some part Madhya Pradesh, but
Agree,
primarily Maharashtra and Gujarat.
agree.
Other
Similar
people are not doing.
Maharashtra, in Maharashtra, if I ask, why are you growing sugarcane in arid areas? Why? Answer to it is because of the assembly. Agriculturalists, you're an agricultural caste, and people whose social capital is drawn from land, they dominate the assembly. Vidarbha is an ideal place for heavy manufacturing. Why is it not taken off? Why is it that in arid areas you're growing water intensive crops like sugarcane and wrecking the groundwater table? Why is it in Punjab you're growing rice? These are important issues because the 20 years, 30 years from now, these places will become inhospitable. They'll become
Already,
ecological disaster.
Punjab is already in that state.
वही तो now the thing is incrementalism का time ही नहीं है हमारे पास. We don't have the time for it. We're already seeing the most deleterious effects we can have both on investment as well as on matters of representation. Similarly, in the southern states also this is a problem. Every time some strategic asset wants to come out. Recently, last year I believe, we found that we have tungsten in the country. So tungsten is one critical mineral. It is not just used in your light bulbs, which are no longer in use anyways, but tungsten is used in a lot of industrial and electronic applications. Immediately there are protests predicated on land, language, this and that. Kudankulam, the Sterlite copper plant, all of these linguistic parties basically became conduits for vested interests to derail or at least attempt to derail these critical national and state projects. Tamil Nadu suffered because when you shut down Sterlite, two things happened. Overnight, from a net exporter, India became a net importer of copper, finished copper. Second thing which people forget, the majority of Tamil Nadu's H2SO4 supply, sulfuric acid supply, and you need sulfuric acid in industries, suddenly it's gone. Because that plant didn't only produce copper, it produced sulfuric acid also. So the competitiveness of Tamil industry suffered. This is a direct outcome why Tamil Nadu has the same problem. It's dominated by the agricultural castes in the assembly. Systematically, the industrial and urban classes are, the representation is depressed in the assembly. You cannot delimit until your states are roughly the equal size. And if you want to have states which are competitive, you have to delimit them internally in a proper way. It's two sides of the same coin. Unfortunately, An inefficient system has gone on for so long. It's only now we are able to see that we're hitting hard, constraints beyond which no incremental policy making can solve these issues.
Yeah, let's see. I think one nation, one election bill would be tabled in the monsoon session, and also delimitation and women's
Yeah.
reservation. So that might increase the rate of change that we want, and the kind
But
of change
one,
we
I'm
want.
sorry, I'm cutting you off. There was this
Yeah.
very, very puzzling paper published by a member of the EACPM, Economic Advisory Council
Hmm.
of the Prime Minister, on delimitation, which basically said two, three things. I will summarize them for you and I will tell you why that is a disaster waiting to happen. And this is very important because the delimitation bill, if they reintroduce it and that report and the ghost of that report is haunting that bill, it will worsen things rather than better them. That report says that they will freeze the north south population percentage, which means that our vote, the value of our vote across the country will get even skewed. It is not just a political problem. Why? Because the value of your vote per state also decides on how much the state gets from the divisible pool of tax revenue. So, places which have lagged and which tend to have higher population, their relative share of investments coming from the center might decrease even further, which will make them lag even further. That is one. Secondly, she says that what we will do is we will only decide that certain constituencies should be split. We will not do a proper delimitation. We will only split certain constituencies where the margins of electoral politics are very small. Like the margin might be 5,000, 7,000 votes people are winning. So we will split only these constituencies. So again, that each vote same value concept is thrown completely out of the window, and all of the economic distortions that result from such a misallocation of seats will increase even further. So more inefficiency rather than less. I only hope that the delimitation bill and the delimitation commission that will be constituted based on the bill recognizes the report for what it is. It is a naked attempt at gerrymandering the constituencies of this country, which will be a net political and economic negative for the country. It is not a step in the positive direction, and I fail to understand why the Economic Advisory Council has anything to say on how delimitation is to occur. But that is a separate debate of its own.
Uh, yeah. So there's a question, request to you, Dikshit
Yeah,
Bhai. There will be a sub AC level delimitation in municipal areas in West Bengal, especially in Kolkata. Do you have any
yeah.
suggestions about it? Could you like be a next future topic podcast? So,
Of
what do
course,
you
I'll
think?
have to study it. I'll have to study what exactly the proposals are on the table. I'm not aware of them. At the same time, when I'm speaking of within the assembly, if the municipal areas are being demarcated properly, that is always a welcome step because the demarcation, i.e., which is delimitation, should reflect the reality, the ground reality. It shouldn't be what we're doing now. Okay, let's suppress the urban areas, let's suppress a certain caste, let us suppress the industrial people, let us also suppress the service industry. As long as that is not happening, I believe that if they can pull it off properly, and I have faith in the current government of West Bengal, they've been doing some phenomenal things on the economic side. If I will certainly study the proposals that might be available in public, and yeah, if it's
We will
worthwhile for you
provide
and me,
you.
we can take it up.
I will be able to send you some data, which
Right,
might actually help you.
right.
And thank you very much again for your time. We are talking about this podcast for a long time. Finally, it happened.
Yes,
uh,
yes,
and
yes.
I would request to you, because you give a very interesting topic to me, like the paper that you're talking about, correct, on delimitation, correct. Maybe we can discuss that paper in detail and its consequences could happen maybe in our next future podcast. That would be interesting thing, because you already have the delimitation bill probably being tabled in the monsoon session. So that would be a good
Right.
primer for the audience itself.
Though, from what I suspect, they will simply, it will be a very light bill, in the sense that they will want decisions to be taken by the delimitation commission, and the bill won't say much, but we should go over the working paper, surely.
Yeah. It will be interesting. And also that again it will link to your topics and ideas that you have discussed in the book itself. So so it will be a good interjection in many parts. So thank you very much for your time, we really appreciate. And before again we leave, I have pinned the book links in the chat itself. I'll put it in the comments as well for the audience. So do check out this groundbreaking book on the future political map of India if it happens in next 100 years. And this actually matters right now to you actually. So like the way people have voted in West Bengal, and the way the voting patterns have emerged over the last 50 years, specifically in bigger states and even in smaller states. So this is going to, like, this will give you a kind of idea that what kind of Bharat that can become the Viksit Bharat of 2047, and what concerns, what constraints are there, and maybe the future leaders who are now reading this book, they become politicians, bureaucrats, they might help to shape the ideas. So do check out the book. I have put the link in the chat also in Amazon. So, and thank you, Dikshit, again for coming.
Yeah.
We will discuss our next podcast idea. It's very interesting on delimitation papers. So we'll connect with you. Thank you. Jai Shri Ram, Vande
Thank you.
Mataram.
Jai Shri Ram. Dhanyavad.